Hi there, thanks for joining us for the first of our Holy Week reflections. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, where we remembered the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem on a donkey, hailed with cries of Hosanna. And after coming into Jerusalem, Jesus went into the temple, and we're going to reflect on that a bit today. So reading from Matthew 21 from verse 12. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. "It is written," he said to them, "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he did, and the children shouting in the temple courts, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were indignant. "Do you hear what these children are saying?" they asked him. "Yes," replied Jesus. "Have you never read, 'From the lips of children and infants, you, Lord, have called forth your praise'?" This story will probably be familiar to many of you, Jesus flipping the tables in the temple. It's a classic. But what had got Jesus so angry? The temple was the place of worship. It was a holy space, and it had become like a marketplace. But it wasn't just that people were selling animals to be sacrificed in worship, which you could argue was quite a practical thing to do. But it was that those who were selling the animals and those who were exchanging the currency to the temple money were ripping people off, which is why Jesus says that the house has become a den of robbers. I'm sure many of us remember the 23rd of June 2016 when the EU referendum took place, which triggered the beginning of Brexit. What you almost certainly won't know is that the day after the EU referendum, Ben got an absolutely terrible exchange rate for euros just before our trip to Paris a few days later. Some of you may have been hit by a similarly frustrating exchange rate, but generally we experience this frustration because we have the luxury of going on holiday abroad. The exchange rate for the temple money was terrible, and it was designed to overcharge and exploit people when they came to worship. So Jesus didn't just flip the tables because selling was happening in the temple, but because those who were vulnerable, those who were poor, weren't able to access the temple, the place of worship. I don't think it's an accident that in Matthew's Gospel, after this incident, Jesus heals the blind and the lame and encourages the children, and is criticised for doing both those things by the chief priests and the teachers of the law. Jesus cares for and pays attention to those who are vulnerable. So as we enter Holy Week, we rightly prepare ourselves and come to reflect and worship together. But as we worship and enter into the events of Holy Week before the glory of the resurrection on Easter Sunday, I think we should examine ourselves and remind ourselves of just how important justice and mercy are in worship to God. Proverbs 21 verse 3 says, "To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." Hosea 6 verse 6 says, "For I desire mercy, not sacrifice, an acknowledgement of God rather than burnt offerings." And 1 Samuel 15 verse 22 says, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams." Of course, our worship these days does not look like animal sacrifice, but we must pay attention to Jesus' actions in the temple and recognise that obedience to God and seeking what is right and just and merciful is more important to God than our outward signs of worship. Our services, our reflections, our hymns and worship songs. Those things are all good, but we need to obey God and to seek justice and mercy too. So as we enter Holy Week, perhaps this isn't so much the time to just hide away in quiet reflection, but a time to speak out against injustice, to obey God courageously, and to be full of mercy and love to those around us, as we seek to see God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven.